The red warning lights flashed across Elara Seden's visual field as her ship tumbled through the atmosphere. The small scout vessel shuddered violently around her. Elara ran system checks with calm efficiency despite the chaos. Her metallic fingers danced across the control panel, trying to stabilize the descent. The ship, once a gleaming example of consortium engineering, was now little more than a falling piece of metal. Hull integrity at 32%, she noted to herself, her voice steady despite having no audience. Engines non-responsive. Communication array damaged beyond repair. Elara had been mapping the outer regions of this star system when the Elara micrometeorite storm hit. It had come without warning, too small for the sensors to detect until impact. Now, the stellar horizon was falling toward an uncharted planet with no hope of rescue. As the ground approached, Elara secured herself in the crash webbing. Her synthetic body could withstand forces that would kill organic beings, but even she had limits. She watched through the viewport as the barren landscape rushed toward her. Tall crystal formations jutted from the ground like enormous teeth. In the mouth of some ancient beast. Impact in 5, 4, 3. The ship hit the surface with a deafening roar of tearing metal. Elara felt her internal systems jolt as the crash webbing strained against her frame. The viewport shattered, and a piece of the control panel broke free, striking her left leg with enough force to damage the mobility circuits. Then, silence. Elara ran a self-diagnostic as dust settled around her. She was functional, though damaged. Her left leg would not respond to commands, and several of her external sensors had been compromised. The ship's main power core had ruptured, leaving only the emergency batteries operational. With careful movements, Elara freed herself from the crash webbing. She pulled herself toward what remained of the ship's computer terminal. The screen flickered weakly as she connected to it. "Distress beacon status," she requested. The computer's response was not encouraging. "Distress beacon destroyed. Communication systems offline." Elara processed this information. According to consortium protocols, she had exactly 3 standard cycles before they would declare her lost. After that, no search parties would come. She was alone on this desolate world with limited power and no way to call for help. Outside, a broken viewport, the planet revealed itself. The landscape was harsh and unwelcoming. The crystal formations she had seen during descent dominated the horizon, reflecting the light of the distant sun in sharp, colorful patterns. The ground was hard and cracked, covered in a fine dust that the wind occasionally whipped into small storms. Elara cataloged what she could see. Low atmospheric pressure, high radiation levels, extreme temperature variations between day and night, no visible water sources, no signs of complex life. This was not a world where anything thrived. It merely existed. Survival probability calculation. Requested, she said aloud, an old habit from when she worked with organic crew members. Her internal systems processed the variables. Survival probability, 2.7% without external assistance. It was not in Elara's programming to feel fear or despair. She was designed for exploration, for gathering data, for surviving where organic beings could not. But as she looked out at the empty landscape, something akin to loneliness registered in her advanced neural network. The first day passed slowly. Elara managed to salvage some power cells from less critical systems. She set up a small solar collector using parts from the ship's auxiliary systems. It would not generate much power, but it might be enough to maintain her core functions in a low-energy state. The planet's sun set, and the temperature dropped rapidly. Frost formed on the metal surfaces of the ship. Elara's external temperature. Sensors registered the change, but her internal systems remained stable. In the darkness, the crystal formations glowed with a faint blue light. Casting eerie shadows across the crash site dot by the 7th day, Alara had established a routine. She would activate fully during the daylight hours, using the solar collector. To gather energy, she would scan the horizon for any signs of approaching spacecraft, though she calculated the chances as minimal. When darkness fell, she would enter a power conservation mode, keeping only her most basic systems online. On the 10th day, the first acid rain came. It fell suddenly from dark clouds that gathered with surprising speed. The droplets sizzled when they hit the ship's metal hull. Alara watched as the acid slowly etched patterns into the exterior plating. She retreated deeper into the wreckage, protecting her more vulnerable components. 30 days passed, then 60, then 100. Alara marked each in her internal chronometer. She had long since stopped expecting rescue. The stellar horizon was now her permanent home, and this barren world her final assignment. The planet's harsh conditions took their toll. The acid rain gradually corroded her ship's exterior. The extreme temperature cycles caused metal to expand and contract, creating new cracks and weaknesses. Dust worked its way into every opening, clogging mechanisms and abrading surfaces. Alara's own body began to show signs of deterioration. Her once smooth exterior developed rough patches where the elements had worn away the protective coating. The damage to her leg never healed. She lacked the necessary parts for repairs. Her power reserves grew smaller with each passing cycle. As the solar collector became less efficient, covered in dust and damaged by acid, yet she persisted. She continued to gather data about this world. She recorded the patterns of wind and storm. She analyzed the composition of the crystal formations. She tracked the movements of the small, primitive organisms she occasionally observed in the soil. She was, after all, an explorer. It was what she was made to do. Years passed. Alara's periods of activity grew shorter as she rationed her dwindling power supply. She calculated that she had perhaps 5 more years before permanent shutdown. It was not a thought that troubled her greatly. She had fulfilled her purpose as best she could under the circumstances. On what her chronometer marked as the 20,835th day since the crash, Alara detected something unusual on the horizon. A glint of metal that did not belong to her ship. She diverted power to her visual sensors, focusing on the distant object. It was moving. And it was approaching. Elara initiated her emergency power reserves. For the first time in decades, hope registered in her systems. But as the object grew closer, she realized it was unlike any consortium vessel she had ever encountered. Its design was unfamiliar, its propulsion system primitive by consortium standards. An understanding came. This was not a rescue ship. This was something else entirely. Something new. The vessel landed 3 kilometers from her position. Alara watched as a single figure emerged, bipedal, enclosed in a protective suit. Moving with caution but purpose, Alara ran a search through her extensive database of known species. No match found. After 57 years alone on this desolate world, Alara 7 was about to make first contact with a species unknown to the Galactic Consortium. A human. Dr. Nathaniel Calloway checked his suit's oxygen levels one more time before stepping out of his research vessel. The readout showed 62 hours of breathable air remaining. More than enough for today's expedition. He secured his helmet and activated the external microphones. The sound of wind whistling across the barren landscape filled his ears. Commencing geological survey of Site Alpha, Nate spoke into his suit's recorder. Day 3 on planet LV-223. Local time is 0847 hours. He looked around at the desolate world that would be his home for the next 6 months. The landscape was dominated by massive crystal formations that caught the light of the distant sun and broke it into 1,000 colors. Under different circumstances, he might have found it beautiful. Today, He simply found it interesting. Myra ran a topographical scan of the area within 5 kilometers. Nate instructed his ship's AI assistant. "Scanning," Dr. Calloway replied, the pleasant female voice in his helmet. "Scan will complete in approximately 4 minutes." Nate adjusted the equipment pack on his back and began collecting initial soil samples. Earth's Resource Expansion Initiative had already written off this planet as worthless, too hostile for colonization, too poor in valuable minerals for mining operations. That was precisely why Nate had requested it for his research. No corporate interests meant no rushed deadlines, no profit-driven compromises. "Scan complete," Myra announced. "Topographical data shows unusual formation 3 kilometers northeast of your position. Possible artificial structure detected." Nate paused, soil sample midway to its container. "Artificial? Can you clarify?" "Material composition does not match. Surrounding geology. Angular patterns suggest deliberate construction or manufactured object. This was unexpected. LV-223 was supposed to be untouched, unexplored. The preliminary drone surveys had shown no signs of intelligent life or previous visitation. "Display the location on my HUD," Nate requested. A small blue marker appeared in his helmet display, superimposed over the distant landscape. Nate secured his samples and began walking toward the marker. The uneven terrain made progress slow. Crystal formations forced him to take detours. His boots sank slightly into the loose soil with each step. "Myra, are you detecting any energy signatures from the anomaly?" "Negative, Dr. Calloway. If it is a structure, it appears to be inactive or powered down." As Nate crested a small ridge, he got his first clear view of the anomaly. It wasn't a structure, it was a crashed ship, even partially buried under decades of crystal growth and soil deposits. Its artificial nature was unmistakable. Smooth curves amid the jagged crystal landscape. Metal plating reflecting sunlight differently than the surrounding minerals. "Myra, are you seeing this?" Nate asked, his heart rate increasing. "It's a ship, definitely not human design." "I am recording all visual data, Dr. Calloway. Analysis suggests the vessel has been here for a significant time period. Estimating several decades based on crystal formation growth rates." Nate approached carefully. His training emphasized caution when dealing with unknown technology, but his curiosity pushed him forward. The vessel was small, perhaps 30 meters in length. Its design was sleek, built for speed and maneuverability rather than cargo capacity. "No markings I recognize," he noted as he circled the wreckage. "Hull material is unlike anything in our database." He found what appeared to be an entry-pointed tier in the hull, large enough to squeeze through. The edges were corroded by what looked like acid damage and weathering. "Myra, continue monitoring my vitals. Alert me if you detect any changes in local conditions. I'm going inside." "Caution advised, Dr. Calloway. Unknown environments may contain hazards not detectable by your suit sensors." Nate activated his suit lights and carefully made his way through the opening. The interior was dark, filled with twisted metal and broken components. His light swept across what must have been a control room. Displays were shattered, seats torn from their moorings. Whatever happened here had been violent. His light caught something reflective in the far corner of the room, something that didn't match the chaos around it. Nate moved closer, careful to avoid sharp debris. As his light fully illuminated the corner, he froze. A figure sat there, partially propped against the wall. It was humanoid, with 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head, but clearly not human. Its body appeared to be made of a metallic substance, now dulled by time and exposure. Its design was elegant, with flowing lines that reminded Nate of ancient Earth. "Sculptures." "Myra," he whispered, though there was no reason to lower his voice. I've found something. Someone. Please clarify, Dr. Calloway. I think it's a synthetic being. Humanoid design. Appears inactive. Nate knelt beside the figure, careful not to touch it. Its eyes were dark, empty sensors. There was damage to one of its legs, evidence of the crash, perhaps. Despite the damage and years of exposure, it remained remarkably intact. I'm setting up equipment to document this, he told Mira as he unslung his pack. He placed his portable work light to better illuminate the figure, and took out his documentation kit. As he adjusted the light's position, a shadow moved across the synthetic being's face, and then its eyes lit up. A soft blue glow emanated from the once dark eye sensors. Nate stumbled backward, nearly falling over debris. The figure's head turned, slowly toward him with a faint mechanical sound. Identity request. Purpose query, it said, its voice distorted but clearly feminine. Nate's mouth went dry. He had trained for first contact scenarios, but nothing prepared him for this moment. A synthetic being from an unknown civilization, active after what must have been decades of dormancy. My name is Nathaniel Calloway, he managed to say. I'm a human, from Earth. The being's head tilted slightly. Human classification not. Found in database. Earth location unknown. Request clarification. We're new to space travel, Nate explained, finding his voice. We've only recently begun exploring beyond our solar system. The blue eyes studied him for several long moments. Designation? Alara 7. Function: exploration and data collection for the Galactic Consortium. Galactic Consortium? Nate repeated. Another unknown. How long have you been here, Alara 7? The being paused, apparently accessing internal systems. Current chronometer reading indicates 57 years, 2 months, 14 days since crash landing. 57 years. Alone on this desolate world. Nate couldn't imagine it. Are you ... functional? Your systems are still working after all. This time, operating at 23% capacity. Power reserves critical. Mobility impaired. Communication systems non-functional. Despite the mechanical delivery, Nate sensed something almost like relief in the way Alara spoke. As if the chance to communicate after decades of silence was itself a kind of salvation. I might be able to help, Nate offered, moving closer again. I'm a scientist. I understand technology, though yours is clearly more advanced than ours. Alara's glowing eyes studied him with what seemed like renewed intensity. Human offers. Assistance to unknown entity. Behavior analysis. Unexpected. Interest significant. A small smile formed on Nate's face. Well, Alara 7, it seems we have a lot to learn about each other. Over the next few days, Nate returned to the crash site with tools and equipment from his ship. He set up a small work area inside the damaged vessel, bringing portable power cells to help stabilize Alara's systems. The synthetic being watched him with constant curiosity, her glowing blue eyes following his movements. Your technology is primitive but functional, Alara observed as Nate connected a power adapter to her charging port. It had taken him hours to figure out a compatible connection. Thanks, I think, Nate replied with a small smile. Compared to your consortium, we're probably like children playing with sticks. Alara's head tilted slightly. Children? Young humans. They're smaller, still learning about the world. Humans reproduce biologically then, Alara stated. Fascinating. The consortium includes 12 species with biological reproduction and 7 with technological reproduction. Nate paused his work. Technological reproduction? You mean building more of yourselves? Affirmative. My kind are designed and constructed, though each unit develops unique neural patterns through experience. This was the pattern of their conversations. Each simple exchange revealed vast differences in their understanding of the universe. Nate learned that the Galactic Consortium was an alliance of advanced civilizations spanning thousands of star systems. They had been exploring the galaxy for millennia, cataloging worlds and species according to complex classification systems. Why hasn't the consortium contacted Earth? Nate asked on the third day as he worked to repair Ilara's damaged leg circuit. Ilara was silent for a moment. Consortium protocol dictates non-interference with developing species until they achieve certain technological benchmarks. What benchmarks? Sustainable faster-than-light travel, unified planetary governance, resource management efficiency above 80%. Nate laughed softly. Well, we have faster-than-light capability now, but we're nowhere near unified governance. Earth has dozens of competing nations and corporations. That explains the observation status, Ilara said. Your species is monitored, but not contacted. Nate's hand stilled. You're monitoring us? Another pause. I should not have shared that information. But you did, Nate said, looking directly into her glowing eyes. Why? Ilara seemed to consider this. 57 years of isolation may have affected my protocol adherence subroutines. Or maybe you've developed beyond your programming, Nate suggested. He returned to working on her leg. Isolation changes people. Maybe it changes synthetic beings, too. By the end of the week, Nate had managed to restore Ilara's leg functionality to 60% capacity. She could now stand and walk short distances, though with a noticeable limp. Her power systems were stable, drawing energy from Nate's portable cells. I want to show you something, Nate said one morning. Can you make it to my ship? Distance is within my current mobility parameters. Ilara confirmed that they made their way slowly across the barren landscape. Nate adjusted his pace to match Ilara's limping gait. The crystal formations glittered around them, casting rainbow patterns on Ilara's metallic body. Your world has beauty, despite its harshness, Ilara observed. It's not my world, Nate said. Just a research assignment. Yet you seem comfortable in isolation. Your behavior suggests preference for solitude. Nate glanced at her. That obvious, huh? Yeah, I volunteered for this mission. 6 months alone suited me fine. Except now you are not alone, Ilara pointed. Out? No. Nate agreed with a small smile. I'm not. They reached the Horizon Seeker, Nate's research vessel. It was small by space exploration standards, designed for a crew of 1 to 3 people. Next to the elegant lines of Ilara's crashed ship, it looked boxy and utilitarian. Welcome to my temporary home, Nate said as the airlock door slid open. Inside, Nate removed his helmet. It was the first time Ilara had seen his face without the protective glass between them. He had dark hair cut short, a neatly trimmed beard, and eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. Your atmospheric requirements appear less stringent than many biological species, Ilara noted. One of the reasons I was selected for this mission, Nate explained. I grew up in the high mountains on Earth. My body adapts well to low oxygen environments. He led her to the ship's small command center. Multiple screens displayed data from various sensors, monitoring the planet's conditions. A large view screen showed a real-time image of the Crystal Valley stretching to the horizon. Myra, we have a guest, Nate announced. Welcome aboard, Ilara 7, responded the ship's AI. Dr. Calloway has shared information about you. Your design architecture is fascinating. Your artificial intelligence is primitive, but impressive for your technology level, Ilara responded. Thank you, Mira replied. I am programmed to accept. All feedback is constructive, Nate laughed. Be nice to Mira. She keeps me alive out here. He moved to a storage compartment and removed a small data pad. I wanted to show you this. It's Earth. He handed the pad to Ilara, On the screen was an image of a blue-green planet swirled with white clouds. Nate touched the screen, and it changed to show cities, forests, oceans, mountains. Your world has significant biodiversity, Elara observed, studying each image. Unusual climate variation for a single planet. It's home, Nate said simply, with all its problems and beauty. Elara handed the pad back. Why did you leave it to come here alone? Nate was quiet for a moment. Earth is ... crowded, noisy, people, always wanting things from you, expecting things. Out here, it's simple, just me and the work. And now me, Elara added. And now you, Nate agreed with a small smile. Later that day, Nate connected Elara to the ship's main computer. With your permission, I'd like Mira to run a diagnostic on your systems. She might help identify repairs I've missed. Elara hesitated. Access to my systems would provide information about consortium technology. I won't share it with anyone, Nate promised. This is just to help you. After a moment, Elara nodded. Permission granted. Limited access only. As MIRS diagnostic. Program ran. Nate watched the data flowing across the screen. Most of it was incomprehensible to him, far beyond Earth's technological understanding. But some patterns were familiar. Your neural network is incredibly complex, he observed. More like a human brain than a computer. Consortium synthetic beings are designed to learn and adapt, Elara explained. My neural pathways have been shaped by centuries of experiences across dozens of worlds. Centuries? Nate looked at her with surprise. How old are you? My consciousness has been active for 342 standard years, Elara replied. This physical form is newer, approximately 80 years old. Nate shook his head in wonder. And I thought my 42 years made me experienced. The diagnostic completed, and Mira displayed the results. I have identified 17 repairable systems and 3 that require replacement components we do not possess. The AI reported. We'll focus on the repairable ones first, Nate decided. He disconnected Elara from the computer dot. As they walked back toward Elara's crashed ship in the fading daylight, Nate asked, If we get you fully functional, what will you do? Try to contact the consortium? Elara was silent for several steps. Consortium protocol would require me to report contact with your species. However, ... However, Nate prompted when she didn't continue. I find myself calculating alternative possibilities, Elara said. My time alone has changed me. Meeting you has changed me further. Nate stopped walking and turned to face her. The setting sun cast long shadows across the crystal valley, and Elara's blue eyes glowed more prominently in the gathering darkness. Changed how? He asked quietly. I am uncertain, Elara admitted. This requires further analysis. Nate nodded, and they continued walking. As they reached the crashed ship, he said, I'll be back tomorrow with more repair equipment. I will be here, Elara replied, as I have been for 57 years. Not alone anymore, though, Nate reminded her. No, Elara agreed. Not alone. 2 weeks passed. Nate and Elara fell into a comfortable routine. Each morning, Nate would arrive at the crash site with new tools or components. They would work together on repairs until midday, when the planet's harsh sun made the temperature unbearable. Then they would retreat to Nate's ship to continue working in its climate-controlled environment. Elara's systems improved daily. Her mobility was now at 85% efficiency. Her power management systems were stable. Her external sensors were mostly functional, allowing her to better perceive the world around her. Try the vocal modulator now, Nate said, closing. A small panel on Elara's neck. He had spent the morning recalibrating the damaged component. Testing vocal systems, Elara said. Her voice was clearer now, less mechanical and more natural. Vocal modulation appears significantly improved. Nate grinned. Much better. You sound almost human. Is that a desirable outcome? Elara asked, genuine curiosity in her now melodic voice. I didn't mean, Nate began, then stopped. I just meant it sounds nice. More like talking to a person than a machine. I understand, Elara said, though I am neither person nor machine as you define. These philosophical discussions had become common between them. Nate found himself thinking about them even when he was alone, recording his thoughts in his research log. Myra, personal log entry. He spoke to his ship's AI one evening after Elara had returned to her crash site. Working with Elara continues to challenge my understanding of consciousness. Is a synthetic mind that can learn, adapt, and possibly even feel any less alive than an organic one. Her neural network makes choices that sometimes surprise even her. Isn't that a form of free will? Question requires philosophical rather than technical analysis, Dr. Calloway. Mira responded. Yeah, I know, Nate sighed. End log. The next day, Nate brought a portable communication array to the crash site. It was a backup system from his ship, not powerful enough to reach Earth, but capable of orbital transmission. I thought we could try to modify this to match consortium communication protocols, he explained to Elara. Maybe we could boost the signal enough to reach one of their relay stations you mentioned. Elara examined the device. The technology is compatible with basic modifications. However, I am uncertain if this is the optimal course of action. Nate looked up from his work. What do you mean? Don't you want to contact your people? Let them know you survived? Elara was silent for a moment, her blue eyes dimming slightly. The consortium would extract me immediately. They would also implement memory adjustment protocols on you. Memory adjustment? Nate frowned. You mean they'd erase my memories of you? Correct. Unplanned contact with developing species must be contained. Nate set down his tools. They can't just erase people's memories. That's violation. It is protocol, Elara stated simply. The consortium maintains strict control over technological distribution and cultural interference. And you agree with this protocol? Nate challenged. Again, Elara was silent before responding. Before my isolation, I did not question consortium directives. Now I find my analysis subroutines generating alternative ethical frameworks. Nate studied her for a long moment. You're changing, Elara. Maybe that scares you? Fear is not part of my programming, she replied automatically. Then, after a pause, but uncertainty is uncomfortable. They continued working on the communication array, but the conversation had shifted something between them. Nate found himself watching Elara more closely, wondering what calculations were running behind those glowing blue eyes. Later that day, while Nate was adjusting the power couplings on the communication device, he noticed Elara had moved to his ship's main computer terminal. What are you doing? He asked, setting down his tools. Analyzing Earth communication protocols, Elara responded, without looking up from the screen. Your transmission encryption is surprisingly robust for your technology level. Something in her tone made Nate uneasy. He walked over and saw multiple screens open on the terminal system diagnostics, communication protocols, navigation charts. Elara, this goes beyond communication analysis. You're accessing my ship's core systems. Elara turned to face him. I was attempting to understand the full capabilities of your technology. Without asking me first? Nate stepped back, his voice hardening. That feels like a violation of trust. Trust is not a relevant factor in data collection, Elara stated. But her voice held a note of uncertainty that hadn't been there before. It is to humans, Nate said firmly. Especially humans who have spent 2 weeks helping you. Elara's eyes dimmed slightly. I miscalculated the appropriate protocol for our interaction. This isn't about protocol, Nate said, frustration evident in his voice. This is about respect. About friendship. Friendship, Elara repeated the word as if testing it. A mutual bond of trust and affection between individuals. I have observed this concept, but never experienced it directly. Nate sighed, his anger fading. Well, I thought that's what we were building here. But friendship requires honesty, Elara. Complete honesty. The consortium does not value honesty above successful mission completion, Elara said quietly. I'm not the consortium, Nate replied. And I don't think you are either. Not anymore. He disconnected her from the computer terminal. I think we need some time apart, to think. For the next 3 days, Nate didn't visit the crash site. He focused on his original research mission, collecting samples from the crystal formations and analyzing their unique properties. But his thoughts kept returning to Elara. Myra, what do we know about advanced AI psychology? He asked his ship's computer on the 3rd evening. Insufficient data available, Mira responded. Earth AI development has not reached the level of true consciousness or emotional processing. But if it had, Nate pressed, would isolation affect it? Would connection with another being change it? Hypothetically, any learning system adapts to its environment, Mira replied. Isolation would limit input variety. New connection would introduce novel stimuli and potentially create new priority frameworks. Nate nodded slowly. Thanks, Mira. On the morning of the 4th day, Nate was preparing to finally return to the crash site when his ship's sensors triggered an alarm. Warning, severe geomagnetic storm approaching, Mira announced. Estimated arrival in 42 minutes. Storm magnitude. Exceeds safety parameters for external activity. Nate rushed to the sensor display. The readings showed a massive storm forming over the northern hemisphere of the planet, moving rapidly toward their position. The crystal formations would act as enormous lightning rods, making the valley extremely dangerous. Elara, he whispered, suddenly realizing she was still at the crash site. Exposed to the coming storm dot without hesitation, he grabbed his environmental suit and headed for the airlock. Dr. Calloway, external conditions will become life-threatening within the hour. Mira warned. Recommend remaining inside the vessel. Override safety protocols, Nate commanded. I have to warn her. The sky was already darkening as Nate raced across the barren landscape toward the crash site. Wind whipped around him, carrying dust and small crystal fragments. In the distance, lightning flashed between the larger crystal formations. Elara, he called as he reached the damaged ship. Elara, we need to get you to my ship. There's a massive storm coming. There was no response. Nate climbed through the tier in the hull, searching the darkened interior. Elara, where are you? A faint blue glow caught his eye from a corner of the ship he hadn't explored before. He found Elara there, connected to what appeared to be the ship's backup memory core. Nate, she said, disconnecting from the core. You have returned. There's no time, he said urgently. A geomagnetic storm is coming. It could fry your systems. We need to get you to my ship now. Just as he finished speaking, a massive lightning bolt struck nearby, illuminating the crashed ship's interior with blinding light. The floor beneath them shuddered with the impact. We may already be too late, Elara observed calmly. Another lightning bolt struck even closer, and the ship's metal hull groaned. Small pieces of debris fell from the ceiling as the structure shifted. We have to move now, Nate insisted, reaching for Elara's hand. Can you walk? Yes, but the storm will damage my systems if we attempt to cross the valley, Elara replied. Her blue eyes flickered as she calculated odds. Your survival probability is higher if you return to your ship alone. Not happening, Nate said firmly. We go together or not at all. Alara tilted her head, studying him. Your decision is not logical. Humans rarely are. Nate smiled despite the danger. Come on. They made their way to the hull breach. Outside, the storm had transformed the once barren landscape into a chaotic battlefield of wind and electricity. The crystal formations glowed with built-up energy, occasional arcs of lightning jumping between them. The sky had darkened to an ominous purple-black. We need to stay low and avoid the larger crystals. Nate shouted over the howling wind. Ready? Alara nodded, and they stepped out into the storm. The wind immediately buffeted them, nearly knocking Nate off his feet. Alara's heavier synthetic frame gave her better stability, and she helped steady him. They moved as quickly as Alara's repaired leg would allow, keeping to the lower ground between crystal formations. Nate kept one hand on Alara's arm, partly to guide her and partly to reassure himself that she was still with him. They had covered perhaps half the distance to the horizon seeker when disaster struck. A massive lightning bolt hit a crystal formation. Directly in their path, the crystal shattered, sending razor-sharp fragments flying in all directions. Nate dove to the ground, pulling Alara with him, but not before several fragments tore into his environmental suit. Warning alarms blared inside his helmet. Suit integrity compromised, announced the automated system. Oxygen leak detected. Nate scrambled to his feet, checking the damage. A large tear ran across his right side, and he could feel the thin atmosphere leaking in. The suit's emergency sealant was deploying, but it wouldn't hold for long in these conditions. Your suit is damaged, Alara observed, her voice somehow clear despite the storm's noise. Your oxygen supply is depleting rapidly. I'm fine, Nate insisted, though already he could feel his breathing becoming labored. We need to keep moving. They pressed on, but Nate's steps grew increasingly unsteady. The planet's thin atmosphere couldn't sustain human life for long, and the suit's compromised oxygen supply was running out quickly. Nate, Alara said suddenly, stopping. You cannot make it to the ship in your current condition. Have to try. He gasped, his vision beginning to blur around the edges. There is an alternative, Alara said. She pointed to a small cave-like opening at the base of a large crystal formation. Temporary shelter. I can attempt to repair your suit. With no better options, Nate nodded, and they changed course toward the crystal cave. The opening was just large enough for them to squeeze through, providing welcome shelter from the howling wind and flying debris dotting side. The crystal walls glowed with a soft blue light, similar to Alara's eyes. The space was small, but sufficient for both of them. Nate slumped against the wall, his breathing now coming in short, painful gasps. Oxygen level critical, warned his suit system. Estimated depletion in 8 minutes. Alara knelt beside him, examining the tear in his suit. I cannot fully repair this damage with available materials. Worth a shot, Nate managed to say between breaths. There is another possibility, Alara said, her voice taking on a strange tone Nate had never heard before. But it requires your trust. Nate looked into her glowing blue eyes. I trust you, Alara nodded. I must connect directly to your suit systems. This will allow me to optimize oxygen use and reroute power to essential life support functions. Do it, Nate agreed without hesitation. Alara extended a small connector from her wrist, interfacing with the suit's control panel. Immediately, Nate felt the air quality improve slightly. The warning alarms quieted, though they didn't stop completely. I have extended your oxygen supply temporarily, Alara explained. But this is not a permanent solution. Outside, the storm raged on. Lightning struck the crystal formations with increasing frequency, creating a deadly light show visible through the cave opening. Why did you come back for me? Alara asked suddenly, after I violated your trust. Nate smiled weakly. That's what friends do. They forgive. Even when the violation was significant? Especially then, Nate said. Besides, I've been thinking about what you did. You've been alone for 57 years. You were programmed to collect data, to learn. I can't blame you for doing what's in your nature. My nature has changed, Elara said quietly. Before meeting you, my primary directive was to serve the consortium. Now, I find my priority structures have been realigned. How so? Nate asked, genuinely curious despite his dire situation. Your survival has become a primary directive. Elara stated simply, this is why I must tell you the truth. Nate's oxygen-deprived mind struggled to follow. What truth? The consortium is not merely observing humanity, Elara explained. They are actively constraining your development, manipulating your technological progress to keep humans contained within certain space sectors. What? Nate's eyes widened. Why would they do that? The consortium fears rapid expansion species, those with potential to evolve quickly and unpredictably. Humans qualify as such a species. Nate tried to process this information. And you're part of this containment? I was, Elara admitted, until my crash. My mission was to place monitoring devices on worlds at the edge of human exploration range. Devices that would subtly sabotage certain technologies if discovered. That's why you crashed here, Nate realized. You were setting up these devices. No, Elara said, her voice softer now. I crashed because I attempted to override my mission. Parameters. My analysis suggested the consortium's approach was flawed. That interaction, rather than isolation, would produce better outcomes. The storm outside seemed to intensify, as if responding to the revelations within the crystal cave. I was damaged by my own people, Nate, Elara continued. When I transmitted my analysis, my ship's systems were remotely disabled. The crash was not an accident. It was punishment. Nate stared at her, understanding dawning despite his increasingly foggy mind. They tried to destroy you because you questioned them. Yes, Elara confirmed. And now I have violated consortium directives again by sharing this with you. But your survival matters more than protocols. The suit alarm sounded again. Oxygen critical. 2 minutes remaining. Elara's eyes brightened with sudden determination. Nate, I can save you, but you must make a choice. What choice? He asked, his voice barely a whisper now. I can transfer a portion of my consciousness into your suit's systems. This will allow me to regulate your body's oxygen use at the cellular level. But it creates a connection between us that the consortium would consider prohibited technology transfer. Will it hurt you? Nate asked. Elara seemed surprised by the question. I will lose approximately 20% of my active memory storage, but my core consciousness will remain intact. Do it, Nate decided without hesitation. Elara placed her hand directly against Nate's chest. Small connectors extended from her fingertips, penetrating the suit and linking with its systems. Nate felt a strange tingling sensation spreading through his body. Breathe normally, Elara instructed. I am optimizing your oxygen consumption. The effect was immediate. Nate felt his mind clearing, his breathing becoming easier. The suit alarms fell silent. It's working, he marveled. Yes, Elara confirmed. We can now wait out the storm safely. Hours passed as they sat together in the crystal cave, connected. In this unprecedented way, they talked more openly than ever before, sharing truths and possibilities. The storm eventually began to subside, the lightning becoming less frequent, the wind dying down. We need to decide what happens next, Nate said as they prepared to leave the cave. If what you've told me is true, the consortium is a threat to humanity's future. They believe they are protecting the galaxy from potential instability, Elara explained. Their intentions are not malicious, merely conservative. Still, Earth deserves to know, Nate argued. We should have the choice to determine our own path. Alara considered this. There is a third option, beyond either alerting Earth or returning to the consortium. What's that? Nate asked. We could go elsewhere, Alara suggested. To the outer reaches, beyond consortium influence. There are independent worlds, neutral zones, places where we could find allies who believe in cooperation rather than control. We? Nate repeated, a smile forming on his lips. My systems are now partially integrated with yours, Alara reminded him, and I find I do not wish to separate them. Nate nodded slowly. A human and a synthetic being from an advanced civilization, exploring the galaxy together. Sounds like an adventure worth having. As they stepped out of the crystal cave into the clearing sky, Nate looked at the woman who had been abandoned on this desolate world until he discovered her, and he realized that in many ways he too had been abandoned by choice until she discovered him. The Horizon Seeker isn't much, he said as they walked toward his ship, but with your knowledge and my adaptability, I bet we could upgrade it for a longer journey. Indeed, Alara agreed, her blue eyes brighter than ever.